Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles! In the last episode, we started the trial of this episode, and we have learned a little bit about the case so far. We got some evidence, we got the case file, which describes how the incident occurred. We got a jackknife that is not the murder weapon, but the weapon of the incident. And we got a crime scene photograph, which we are going to examine right away because this is a little bit awkward and might be very important for the case coming. But without further ado, let's get into the cross-examination, Mr. Natsume's arrest.
As I said, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon when the incident occurred, and there was an unusual light fog.
Hold it! Let's press that guy. A light fog, you say?
Well, light for London. You could see the opposite side of the street for once, not much farther though.
That's light, is it?
Around these parts, yes. Not something I'd expect a Japanese fellow like yourself to know, of course.
I've read that London is famous for its fog. But in my country, people usually imagine that gives the city a rather beautiful appearance. How quaint.
Yes, well, it's not something us Londoners tend to romanticize, as I expect you can appreciate.
I see.
At this time of year, the fog causes a large number of accidents, especially when it's heavy. Sometimes you can't even see your own hand at the end of your arm.
Indeed. The other day I was very nearly trampled by horses before I could see the carriage that they were pulling.
Susato-san and I should definitely remember to stop, look, and listen.
However, on the day that concerns us, the fog was somewhat lighter than usual. A fact no doubt lamented by the accused.
Visibility was reasonably good, and there was no one else but the victim and the accused, so we're gonna press Mr. Gibson again.
How are you able to state that with any certainty? Quite simply, my learned friend, because that is what the witnesses to this crime have told us. Ah, yes, Inspector Gregson mentioned the witnesses yesterday, didn't he? That's right. One of them is a policeman, I believe, from Scotland Yard.
That is correct, man.
Then we must hear their testimony. The prosecution will, of course, call them to the stand, should it be necessary. But wait a minute. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of winter, it would have been dark already. No matter how light the fog might have been, no one could have seen... I'm unaware of the situation on your tiny island in the east. But here in the capital city of Great Britain, all main roads are illuminated in the night by gas streetlights. The prosecution believes there would have been ample light by which to witness the crime. Quite. Here in London, for the first time in history, mankind has completely conquered the darkness. Which means we really need to hear those witness statements. If I could just get through the fog of this cross-examination, maybe we'll be able to. It seems the counsel for the defense is taking stock. Continue with your testimony, Inspector.
Out of the blue, the victim was stabbed from behind and subsequently collapsed on the pavement.
Hold it! From behind, you say?
That's right, as you can see from this print.
Yes, quite so, Inspector. The handle of the weapon is clearly protruding from the victim's back. And you say this poor woman, Miss Green, remains in a critical condition, comatose, no less?
I'm afraid so, my lord, yes. She's been treated at Bart's. I was hopeful that she'd come around before the trial started so I could take a statement, but it wasn't to be.
Yes, that is indeed a pity. It would have been most illuminating to hear the victim's own account of events. Luck is on your client's side, it seems.
On the contrary, my client has been exceedingly unlucky.
Your force of tone is seriously undermined by those disturbingly wide eyes, I'm afraid.
The accused ran off, scattering his belongings all over the floor.
Oops. I misclicked. Sorry, guys. So, let's press.
Mr. Natsume's belongings, I think you'll find it's all there in the photographic print of the crime scene.
Yes, the 3 books on the floor.
That's right, my lord, second-hand books they were. Irreparably damaged after falling in the snow, of course.
The accused could easily have carried all 3 books in one hand, which means his other hand would have been free to wield a knife, for example.
He's very clever, isn't he?
What do you mean?
He's made it extremely hard for you to assert that Mr. Natsume had his hands full with his books. He's managed to close the one avenue of escape we might have had before we even knew it was there.
You mean to say that the defendant was holding his belongings as he thrust the knife into the woman's back?
That must be what happened, my lord. Yes. There's been a number of old books he'd just bought. He was on his way home from a bookshop, it seems.
Let's press.
The defendant apparently visits a second-hand bookshop on a daily basis. Yes, so I understand. A shop full of old English literature.
I commend the accused on the lofty subject matter of his scholarly attention.
The bloke's room was stacked floor to ceiling with those musty old books.
Can you tell us more about the bookshop in question, please, Inspector?
Well, if I must, I'll have to ask you to look at the street map again, I'm afraid.
Bourbon Books.
The closest second-hand bookshop to the accused's lodging is this place here, Bourbon Books. A little place on the corner of Briar Road and Meerschaum Street.
Meerschaum?
As it happens, the accused is currently living in lodgings on the other side of Briar Road at the opposite end. Which means it doesn't take a genius to work out the route he would have taken. Something like this.
The local map's information has been updated in the court record. Yes, I concur with your conclusion, Inspector.
I want to check that out right away. I'm sorry.
So this is alright, so we got the Bourbon Books in. That's all. Okay, sorry. The defendant would certainly have passed the scene of the crime on his way home from that particular shop.
Mr. Naruhodo? I think that what the inspector just told us could turn out to be of vital importance.
Yes, I agree. The most important point that the inspector just made being that must be the name, because we know that he went somewhere else, right? Your box. It's the name. So, alright. The bookshop's name it is. Inspector Gregson, may I ask you a favor?
What?
Would you kindly add the name of the bookshop to your formal testimony, please? I believe it may be of vital importance.
Maybe?
Well, you know, I mean, yes! It could be a very important clue. Very well. Not that I can see it being of any great significance. But please revise your testimony accordingly, Inspector.
Yes, sir, my lord. Whatever you say.
Could the man be any more sardonic?
He was on his way home from Bourbon Books, a second-hand bookshop he apparently patronizes.
Oops, no, we're not gonna present right away because we wanna have all the dialogue. I'm gonna press first. So the shop is called Bourbon Books, is it?
That's right. That's the closest second-hand bookshop to the accuser's lodgings. And to get from there back to his room, he would have gone right past the very spot where the incident took place.
If I could just confirm one point. Can we be sure the defendant really did visit Bourbon Books on the day in question?
Well, we haven't actually confirmed it, no?
You haven't confirmed it? Why the devil not, Inspector?
Well, the thing is, the shopkeeper's gone on a trip, you see. Left the morning after the incident to collect more stock, I'm told. So we, haven't been able to ask the bloke if the accused visited his shop on the day in question or not.
Well, in that case, what did the defendant himself have to say about it? No recollection.
What?
According to the statement he made at the time, the accused has no recollection of where he'd been. Of course he doesn't.
The bloke clearly has his head in the clouds whenever he's walking about town. He claims he just wanders into whatever bookshop he happens to be passing and rarely notices the name.
I should say the man ought to learn to look where he's going at the very least. So, it's just as I thought then.
Is something the matter?
Inspector, you may continue with your testimony.
It was just a matter of working out who the books belonged to, and we found the bloke to arrest him. We're gonna press again.
You asked for the help of the famous detective Sherlock Holmes to locate the defendant, I believe.
Stuff and nonsense.
Sorry?
That jack in the office, that busybody, just comes and sticks his oar in whether we will ask him or not.
But according to what I have here, Mr. Holmes was shown to the scene by Scotland Yard detectives.
Well, that was nothing to do with me. The lads of the scene must have done it without their permission. I tell them time and again, whenever something happens, send word to headquarters. Then follow your blooming instructions.
I see.
If that meddler gets his hands on any details, we'll all be reading it at Rand's magazine next month. And you can bet your last farthing that I'll be in there too. Strip of all my hard work on the case. Yes, Mr. Holmes. No, Mr. Holmes. Aren't you clever, Mr. Holmes? That's all the thanks I'll be getting.
Inspector, if the man is proving detrimental to the yard's activities, perhaps I should step in and deal with him?
It appears Inspector Gregson is lost for words.
Yes, the Reaper's words carry a lot of weight, obviously.
Anyway, the point is this.
That little Japanese bloke's already admitted it. He's admitted that those books all over the pavement at the scene were the ones he bought that day.
What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? If you're unable to sway the jury during this cross-examination, I'm afraid
That Mr. Natsume's fate will be sealed? Yes, they're sure to find him guilty. So, one way or another, I have to expose an undeniable inconsistency in the inspector's testimony. Alright, so we know where to have a rod into the water to get the fish in. And this is the bourbon books, and we are going to present the second-hand book receipt, which tells us that Mr. Natsume was at your books, not at bourbon books. Let's go. If I could just stop you there, Inspector Gregson.
What is it, Sunshine? I'm a busy man, you know.
This is a receipt that we found in Mr. Natsume's room. It was issued on the day of the incident and details the purchase of 3 second-hand books.
And you found that in the accused room, did you?
Yes, but the point is not where the receipt was found, but the name of the shop printed on it. Go on. This receipt was issued from a bookshop called Your Books. Your Books? Y-O-R-E, I presume? Yes, my lord, so Mr. Natsume did indeed purchase a number of books at second-hand bookshop that day. However, the bookshop in question was not bourbon books.
What?
Inspector, do you know of this other bookshop?
Yes, sir. Your Books is another second-hand bookshop not far from Bourbon Books. It's just that, well, it's such a small place, I didn't think the accused would have known about it.
But in fact, that is the bookshop which the defendant visited on the day in question. And this receipt proves it.
Objection!
Yes, for what difference it makes. Wherever the man purchased his musty tomes, it makes no difference in the final analysis.
Objection!
I disagree. I mean, after all,
I have the street map here, if that might be of help.
Oh, yes, thank you. Have a look at this, please. If the defendant had been returning from Bourbon Books, then yes, he would almost certainly have passed the place where Miss Green was attacked. However, if we take into account the fact that he was actually at another bookshop, Your Books, it may very well turn out that he wouldn't have passed that location at all. Could that be true?
My, it rather depends on where this other bookshop is, but I do declare it may be a possibility.
Is right, Mr. Lawyer, sir, what you just said? Absolutely. It absolutely could be right. Inspector Gregson, where is this Your Books establishment?
Well, obviously we looked into that. It turns out that Your Books is just here on the next corner of Meerschaum Street, going east.
The local map's information has been updated in the court record. And there you have it, as you can clearly see now. Oh, yeah, it doesn't change anything. Unfortunately, it doesn't change anything. My learned Japanese friend is obviously in training to be a clown. The way he regales us with such witticisms. To your future career in the circus.
You put that glass down now, or I'll put it down for you!
I didn't think I needed to spell it out, but here we go. If the accused was coming home from Your Books instead of Bourbon Books, there's no doubt he still would have passed the place where the victim was stabbed.
Yes, thank you, Inspector. Allow me to reiterate for my learned, if somewhat slow, Nipponese friend. Wherever the man purchased his musty tomes, it makes no difference in the final analysis.
As I suspected, You can't fool me, and I don't suggest you try.
What did I say, huh? I've heard enough of this now. Beg your pardon? Terribly sorry, but would you mind repeating that?
Mr. Naruto, we mustn't give up. What do you mean? If the prosecution's assertion is correct, the members of the jury may very well decide that Mr. Natsume is guilty. She's absolutely right. We must think. We must consider the assertion just put forward by the prosecution very, very carefully. They claim Saseki-san must have passed the location of the incident on his way home from your books, but... I have no clue. 4:45 p.m. And the incident occurred around 5, right? Rendered unconsciously, early 20s. No, there's nothing about that. We have to raise an objection. We can't just leave it. We have to raise an objection. Let's just raise an objection here. The assertion just made by your prosecution is fundamentally flawed. Explain yourself, counsel. Yes, my lord. You can see what I mean on this map. When returning from your books to his lodgings, Mr. Natsume could have followed the route suggested by the prosecution. However, that isn't the only conceivable route to take between the two places. That's true, he can just go like, yeah, exactly like this. If the defendant used this street, look what happens. He arrives back at his lodgings without passing the location where the victim was attacked.
Objection!
Talking back to a clown is a fool's errand, of course. However, I feel compelled to point out that route is what is commonly referred to as the long way around. On a cold winter's night, why would any man choose to take a longer route home? Well, the answer is extremely simple. He wouldn't. In other words, the accused took the obvious route back to his lodgings and is the obvious perpetrator of this crime.
Objection!
But, yes, I've got it. Obviously, we must ask the man himself. Ask Mr. Natsume which route he took out. I have already informed the court of the accuser's response to such questioning. He claims he has no recollection.
That's right. As I said, the bloke seems to spend his time outside wandering aimlessly from A to B. That day was no exception. He says he doesn't remember where he was or which route he took home.
I don't
Believe this!
I thank you, my learned friend, and suggest that we do not waste any more of this court's time by wandering aimlessly around this subject. Pray, what say you insightful jurors? But even if that is the case, the defense still...
I agree with Lord von Zieks, wholeheartedly and in every way.
What? I don't believe it. Does this mean...
We members of the jury are completely convinced now.
Very well. In that case, I hereby call upon all members of the jury to present your findings to the court.
Guilty!
Guilty. 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 Guilty.
Guilty.
Oh no. Did I mess up? Oh, it would appear the jury anonymously. I'm so flabbergasted that I actually just clicked. Sorry, guys. To the insightful members of the jury, I applaud your brave resolve. You serve Queen and country admirably. Mr. Naruto. No, not yet. This isn't over yet. I still have one last chance to sway the opinion of the jury. I have to tip the balance of those scales the other way. I have to turn this around. Somehow. Those are the eyes of Quarry not yet willing to give up and die. So I presume you intend to wield your rights again in this trial. Rights of the defense, written into antiquated British law that should have been buried long ago. Call it antiquated if you will, but it's the defense's prerogative to carry out a summation examination if it so chooses. Very well, counsel. In accordance with the letter of the law, we shall proceed with a summation examination. Are the members of the jury ready, Mr. Foreman? Of course we are ready. I'm all too familiar with the Nipponese whippersnapper and his uncle's refusal to throw in his alley. Very well then. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will each explain on what grounds you have determined the defendant to be guilty. Judicial findings. The juror's contentions.
For pity's sake, that little Nipponese oddity already admitted it himself, didn't he?
If he said that a woman in green collapsed before his eyes, why it can only have been the victim.
The man wouldn't have gone around the houses on his way back from the bookshop. Not in winter.
So the poor woman was attacked from behind, was she? How dreadful.
I really don't care. Can't we just wrap this up now? I've got work to be doing. Your books, yes. Nice shop, that. But Baden books? No, not worth a visit.
With only minor exceptions, the reasons for finding the defendant guilty are all too clear. When the stabbing occurred, the only two people at the scene were the victim and the accused. And the accused himself has admitted to seeing the victim in her green overcoat sink to the ground before his eyes. Furthermore, we have heard from the inspector that the defendant then fled the scene. I must say, I would have ample grounds to convict this man already. Oh dear, even the judge appears convinced of Mr. Matsume's guilt now. Why did he have to run away like that? And how are we supposed to believe in some phantom attacker that nobody could see? This is impossible. How can I possibly make a case for the defense? Mr. Naruto, this is no time for grumbling. If we want to force the trial to continue... Yes, I know. I have to turn the tide. I must make the jurors change their minds. Well, 4 of them, at least. Exactly. We have no choice but to forge forward. You have the floor, counsel. Begin your summation examination. Yes, my lord. I just need to keep this trial going somehow. Whatever it takes. Come on, Rinosuke. You can do it.
Jury examination. The defense's rebuttal. But I'm sorry, guys. This is it for this episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles because we almost reached the half-hour mark. And we are going to go for the rebuttal in the next episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. See you then.